This is just where you try to get our deepest, darkest secrets.
Hello and Kate Mila Fáilte to MudderRucker, the podcast all about Irish women's rugby. Join me, Elva O'Nolan.
And me, Cianan Willor.
As we bring you the latest on the Irish women's team, from squad selections to match analysis and everything in between.
If you enjoy the show, be sure to follow, rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us to grow.
Now, strap on your scrum cap, get stuck in, and let's talk Irish women's rugby. Welcome to episode 7 of MudderRucker, the only podcast dedicated to Irish women's rugby. Joining us again is Irish International, Munster and UL Bows captain Chloe Pearse, and Irish Leinster and Railway Union tight head and hooker apparently, Katie O'Dwyer. Welcome back.
Thank you. I think we're two fragile women now after the weekend we've had, so bear with us.
Fragile physically.
There'll be a lot of stuttering going on.
Physically, mentally, emotionally.
All
I
of
mean,
the
we'll
above.
go easy on you
All of the
anyway.
above.
Yeah.
So today we break down round 5 of the Six Nations as Ireland missed out on a third win away to Scotland at the Hive. Italy humbled Wales in Parma, and England just about got away with a Grand Slam in Twickenham. We will also look ahead to the World Cup as the dust settles on this year's Six Nations. The final this year very closely resembled that of last year, with only Italy and Scotland switching places, as Italy took 4th spot, a point behind Ireland. We'll look at comparison shortly, but let's look at the game in Parma on Sunday first. Saturday wasn't to be, or Super Saturday wasn't to be, as this game was postponed to mark the funeral of Pope Francis. Katie, how will that change have impacted the sides in terms of their preparation, having to move it back a day?
Yeah, it's difficult in those moments. You're prepared all week and you have certain training sessions obviously fixed at certain times of the week. More physical ones, I suppose, a little bit earlier on, and then you start to kind of get into the finer detail later on. But look, they're all, I suppose, long enough in the tooth now to know how to manage those situations. Especially the experienced players there and management to just rally around. You're pushing it out, obviously, just the day. So, yeah, it is inconvenient, but I think everyone now would be mature enough to be able to manage those scenarios if they arise.
We saw Wales dominate in the opening minutes, and they looked relaxed and somewhat intentional in the first half with some nice quality phase play. With just 2 points in it at half time, Chloe, what did Italy change about their game to push on in the second half?
I think a lot of it was Wales' downfall. You know, they've started every game bar one with a try. Bar, the France game, they've gone ahead actually early every game against ourselves, England, Italy. So they've started each game really well, and then they just seem to fade away and cannot sustain that for 80 minutes, which is really disappointing for them. I think Italy just started playing to their strengths. They scored some fantastic set piece tries. Stefan was back at 9. She was brilliant. Ran a lovely line for the second try inside, that real DuPont's cheat line. And then Medea, who I think probably I criticised a bit much last week. She threw some beautiful passes. The inside pass for the last try was super. Real disguised run with Rigoni running a hard line, and then she just hit Mutso on the inside, and it was unbelievable. But yeah, I think Italy just started playing to their strengths a little bit more. They got their exciting backs. Wales had leaked a couple of penalties, and Italy started to put daylight in with a couple of 3-pointers as well. But Wales just seemed to struggle to sustain that kind of performance. And it's actually worrying, I would say. I know we've spoken a lot about the little time they've had in preparation with Sean Lim coming in off the back of Gloucester, but they really are going to have to do a big pre-season before the World Cup, or else it's going to be an early exit for them for that, I see.
Sean Lynn was speaking during the week, and he was quite vocal about players potentially being dropped going into the Rugby World Cup. Is that a tool to motivate them, Katie, do you think? Or is that intentional from him? He's intending to drop people.
It's hard to know, I think people talk with a lot of emotion as well in a competition like this. For me, I think if I was the head coach, I'm not sure I'd be throwing out those kind of statements. You're more trying to bring a group along with you rather than kind of say, well, you know, people are potentially going to be dropped. You want to try and bring people in and have outside people as well in with a shot too, you know, girls that are maybe playing a club at the moment, and, you know, bring those outside players in, and you want them to be able to come in and play. But without, for me, I really wouldn't be throwing out those statements. But look, maybe he will. Maybe he's just trying to light a bit of fire underneath some of them to pick them up after that campaign. It's hard to know, but I suppose time will tell in that sense, yeah.
I think it's probably the type of rhetoric we would hear a lot in the men's game, but doesn't sit well with women in the women's game, in particular, that negative kind of motivation. But I mean, maybe he knows what he's talking about. He's coached the women's game for so long. Maybe it will light a fire underneath them. Looking at the game as a whole, I think we probably saw a continuation of Wales' form, particularly in terms of their indiscipline. But I think for this game, we saw them being pinged a lot more at the breakdown. Sarah Cox was at the whistle, a very, very experienced referee. You know, she's not going to miss those kind of infringements where they're coming in the side, where they're off their feet, where they're not running away, where they're continually illegally slowing it down. How much, Chloe, does that impact a game when the breakdown isn't officiated well?
I don't know. I did play in an AIL final Sunday where there was a lot of suspect refereeing going on from the railway side. So you'll have to
just from the railway side.
Yeah, I'll have to throw that in there.
Shots fired. Shots fired.
We're 4 minutes in and I've thrown it in. I'm joking,
we'll have to
obviously.
watch it back live here or something.
Yeah, we'll do a goggle box with the four of us. No, I suppose, look, referees do their analysis as well, right? And we spoke about the Wales game and we spoke about how poorly she refed that, and every one of us said like that Wales got away with murder at the breakdown. They slowed the ball down. They were cynical. There should have been more cards. So Sarah Cox would have also done her analysis. And look, the teams also meet the ref, I'm sure. And it'd be something I would flag. I am sure the Italians flagged that to her and that they wanted to play quick, and which they do, and whether they play quick with their backs or they play that pick and go game that they love and they try to get an offload in, which they did, they'd have flagged that to her. So she was on the money and Wales didn't get away with it, as they shouldn't, so that did cost them. They had a real high challenge as well, dangerous. So, that was pinged too. And she gave that in real time. I know obviously they went to the TMO to send it to the bunker review, but the minute it came in, Sarah Cox, her hand went out. But I thought she refed it really, really well. She's one of the top refs, I would say, in this Six Nations. But it was just as it should be. Like, she just refed the game to the letter of the law. And, that's the way the game should be, I think.
Looking at referee standards across the entire competition, we've spoken about Sarah Cox, but we've had very experienced referees like Amy Barrett, Maggie Cogger-Orr, and arguably the best ref in the world, at least in my opinion, Holly Davidson. They were holding a really, really high standard of officiating. However, in some of the other games, the breakdown was really poorly refereed, and so was the scrum. I think it was guesswork at times with the scrum, and I know to a certain extent it is guesswork at scrum time when this, in particular, the referees, it's the closest to a scrum they've ever been. Their playing days typically for referees is in the backs. But it felt like the competition at times was being used as a training ground for developing referees. And I mean, it's great to see opportunities for individuals that are from underrepresented countries, such as Precious Pisani from Zimbabwe. But Katie, how important is it to have top-class referees at this level?
Well, I suppose, especially with the year that's in it, you want these games to be quality. These are, I know there'll be warm-up games later on in the year for the World Cup, but these are important games too to get right. And even for front rows and for scrum time, that needs to be refereed properly. Number one, so that it's safe for players, and number two, so that they're creating a platform there. They know what they're doing right and wrong. They're not getting mixed messages every week. And I think it's that inconsistency that's really frustrating. You might expect it at club level, but at that level, it needs to be a step up. I know Sarah Cox, she was very, very, she was vocal as well. It's really good. You can hear her constantly talking, and I suppose she's not watery is what you'd kind of describe her as. She's definite and she's sure about her decisions. But there was a comment in that game as well about how she was nearly being excessively clear and decisive because of the other officials that she has with her. Because they were obviously newer to the job and that. So there was a comment like that during the game, during the Six Nations game. So yeah, and we've heard our own couple of comments as well. I won't name what game it was, but a referee's mic was left on and you could hear it on our video analysis, and she's there saying, how the F am I going to go out and do this? You know, so that's in international games. So I mean, yeah, it's not good enough to have 2 or 3, you know, decent refs that you're hoping to get. And I think it's frustrating for players in those moments, in the breakdown like that. It stops the flow of a game. We're trying to create this attractive product for people, but it just gets frustrating and it gets slower. And yeah, I think they probably should be looking, you know, to up the standard there, especially in the year of a World Cup.
Watching the England-France game, Maggie Cogger was behind the whistle there, and what I noticed during the game was how much she was communicating with her ARs. You know, there was one point at which she just asked, "Is 3 okay?" And instantly, she obviously got something in her ear, and she gave advantage. France 3 was offside. And I think so much of good refereeing is a lot of experience, but really, really good communication, really calm communication like that. I think if they're treating the Six Nations as a bit of a development phase for some referees, it could be, you know, a safety consideration at times. It's certainly not where you want to see, you know, it's the top flight of European rugby. Is that the place to develop referees, or should they be developed within club structures? Chloe, come to you.
Yeah, like I think there's club structures, and I think there's other platforms, you know, when we look at like WXV, like I'm not to diminish like WXV 2 and 3, but you know, that's probably where it needs to be. Our friendlies, there's enough European Championship friendlies going on around here, but Six Nations matter, like, and you know, you have to think of like the quantifiable cost of where people finish and how decisions can have an impact on that. Now look, I never say solely a ref will have like one decision I don't think impacts the full game. Like you have to look at the game as a whole and say, you know, okay, maybe they gave that decision, but we made X amount of mistakes, you know, like, so you can't just blame a ref. I don't believe in that. Like just saying a ref was the reason for one team winning or losing. But at the end of the day, like that's the reality. Like, and nations get money for finishing points. Players get money for finishing points. There's a cost to that associated. There's world rankings. There's, you know, that's how World Cup seedings are decided. So it is so important. Like these games all matter. They're not just because it's a World Cup year any lesser value. So they should be regarded in that way. And if it means, like, I'm all for women in sport and I'm all for promoting women, I think it's brilliant. But if the standard isn't met, then we shouldn't take any less because we want to have a full female representation. We should have male refs in then. You know, like that's my view on it. Or make sure you get Holly Davidson every week and Amy Barrett and Maggie Kerr. Do you know, like, and I know it sounds silly, but if that's the standard, that's the standard. And then everyone else has to do their best to meet the standards. We shouldn't lower that bar.
I'd agree. There's definitely value to promoting female refs, and you know, the ones who meet that standard should absolutely, within a female competition, take top spot. But if there's refs that don't meet that standard, they shouldn't be put into that competition for all those reasons you've outlined. We mentioned briefly the England-France game, so I'll move on to that if I may. So Twickenham, big game in Twickenham. England very much the favourites, as they are every year, and aiming for a 7th title in a row. It came down to the wire, Chloe.
Yeah, the game was bonkers. It was like, you know, England go 31-7 up and you think, right, that's it now. France are rattled. And then Zoe Harrison makes that mistake. And God bless her, you had to feel for her, but it's not the first one. You know, that's the other side of it. And like, I do think that's pressure. Like, I think it's pressure from Bourdon Sansus, but I think that's pressure of a World Cup year. And knowing that there is 3 viable 10s in this position. So, like, you don't anticipate her to make that mistake. I do think that changed the game a little bit. Now, obviously, England kick on and they go 38-21 up. And at that point, I thought that was it. And France get another one back and they get another one. And then England go 43-28 up. And then you think, okay, no, that's really it at 58 minutes. And then France just do France. And like, their wingers were super 19-year-olds, Grise and Arbe. They were absolutely class, like got them back in the game to go 43-40 and then to kick like an almost touchline conversion. And you think this is going to happen. And then the game ends like so sadly. And it's horrendous. And they knock the ball on from the kickoff and England win. But England...
It's the cruelest way to end the game, isn't it?
Well, I don't know now. That's a touchy subject, I'd say. But it was horrendous. Like, it deserved more. It just deserved so much more.
I just cry here into my notes.
Yeah, look, that's a cruel way to end, but it deserved a grand slam finish. Like, it really did. And then to knock it on, I was, I think everyone was devastated unless you were an English supporter, because you just wanted to see what France were going to do. Like, we knew England were going to kick long. They were like, they had to. But like, we were all hoping France, went coast to coast, but unfortunately not to be. And look, that's a game. I think France will say, why didn't we do what we did between 58 and 78 minutes sooner?
Looking at that, you mentioned the Bourdain Sansu try in the first half. It was a pass back into the try area to Zoe Harrison, which he then fumbled, and Bourdain Sansu, being the most awake person in the world, just dives on it. But England were so slow to react.
Yeah.
So, or Katie, what is it about England? Were they a bit complacent there?
Yeah, potentially. I think, they were probably cruising there, as Chloe mentioned, like 25 minutes gone, you're 31-7. I know the try came and like, they're probably thinking, grand, and we spoke last week about France not firing on all cylinders, during this campaign. So I'm sure England, it's hard not to be. You're going for your seventh, and you're looking at their reaction as well, like at the full-time whistle, to see, what it means to them at this point and what keeps them going and that. So I don't know. They're only human. There has to be a little bit of complacency there at times. But I think, as Chloe said, it's just a pity that France just kind of didn't put the foot on the throttle a bit earlier. It would have been an absolutely cracking finish, in fairness, to see France winning. Because I don't think anyone expected it. And I don't think anyone expects them to come as close as they did either. But yeah, maybe a small lapse in concentration. But they still got the job done in the end. Yeah.
It was interesting to see, I think, Chloe, a lot of the substitutions were made, both sides made substitutions on pretty much on the dot of 50 minutes. England, in most of their games, have done exactly the same thing and brought on some absolute worldies on 50 minutes. And usually what they do at that point is they stretch the game and they're off, and there's no catching them at that point. But it was pretty much the opposite. France seemed to benefit more from that. Immediately after those changes, Abidal scored a try, but then France had so much ball and seemed to be the stronger side.
Yeah, it was funny watching the two front rows come on together and the ref looking, and they were saying it's a ref's nightmare, isn't it, going into the scrum, two brand new front rows. And I think it was very, like, when they took off Bourdain Sansu, I was saying, oh Lord, what is going on? Have they given up? And that was my honest thought. I said, have they just thrown in the south? And, she's obviously going back to play top 14 or whatever, and is what's happening. But like, the scrum half who came on, she was cracking. She did a fantastic job. Like, Chambon, like, she was a different player to Sansus, and they brought on Kira as well. Like, and they just did super stuff, and they put the pace on. And I think it was just England hadn't been tested like that. And they couldn't cope with it. Like, they couldn't cope with the pace that France put on the game. I think, like, the wingers, obviously, for England are fantastic attacking. I think they got shown up a little bit. Like, they missed a lot of tackles. Emma Singh missed a couple of tackles. They made a couple of poor defensive reads. Abidal gets handed off. Now, it's not to take away of the quality of those French wingers and what they did. But I do think, like, as England, Like, they now have to be worried going into World Cup of, you know, we nearly lost that game. We are going to come up against pretty good teams. You know, if we don't sort that out, this home World Cup fairy tale ending that I think everyone assumes is going to happen might not. You know, New Zealand, Portia Woodman's come out of retirement. Ruby Tui's back. They've some cracking players. Like New Zealand in the women's game at World Cup time are a different kettle of fish. You know, I know WXV, we might write them off, but they're going to come over and they're going to be hoping to go back to back, you know.
Portia Woodman's a bit of a cheat code, Katie, isn't she?
Absolutely. I'd say every other nation was looking at that announcement being like, Jesus Christ, here we go. Yeah. And she just brings so much experience as well as her playing ability.
I imagine England probably changed a lot of their plans straight off the bat for that. Speaking of fairy tale endings, we'll move on to the Ireland game, and it wasn't to be a fairy tale ending for us, unfortunately. Scott Beeman rang the changes with Aoife Corey starting at 15, getting her first cap, Jane Clossy making her debut off the bench, Dorothy Wall moving to back row as Aoife Wafer picked up a niggle against Wales, and Vicky Elms-Killen earned her first start out on the wing. Ireland made a lot of changes coming into the match, but there was many further changes forced during the game also, with Darrow picking up a very serious looking Achilles injury. We also had issues with a lot of HIAs. We had 3 in the first half. O'Dowd passed hers, but unfortunately Enya Breen and the captain Adele McMahon Tricky, they didn't return after their HIAs. Katie, how did that impact our game?
Yeah, I think we were probably lacking a bit of leadership when the likes of Tricky goes off the pitch and then you're missing Darrow and, you know, you have new girls in the mix, and it probably felt a little bit unsettled for the girls themselves. You're relying on people to step up that maybe aren't used to stepping up. Yeah, it was disappointing to lose them. And you know, as you mentioned there, Darrow is going to be a huge loss. Like, she's obviously one of the most capped there as well. So unfortunate to see her going, but great then to see the likes of Jane coming in. I'd say she's delighted with herself after getting that amount of time as well. Probably a bit unexpected to have to come in that early, but it's great to start seeing those type of girls getting plenty of game time. But yeah, I think just a bit of inexperience maybe struck them a bit. I would have liked to probably seen Kleena coming on maybe earlier just to steady the ship a bit, just as maybe a bigger character and kind of an older head there. And just for physicality as well. I mean, you could always move Neve Jones to the back row there as an option too. So I was disappointed not to see her coming in a little bit earlier. I think she would have steadied the ship rightly there, and she was her usual aggressive dog itself when she came on. So yeah, a little bit earlier would have been, yeah, I think more beneficial to the group as a whole, really.
I mean, we'd already gone into Edinburgh with 2 back rows out. Depth further stretched on the day. Wall, McMahon, Breen, all gone by the hour. Had a tough, 3 away fixtures, 6-day turnarounds, 2 debutantes in Scotland as well. And it was a disappointing day, but we still had still banked statement wins in Parma and Newport that showcased a pretty tight line out, sharper ruck speed, and the best attacking return Ireland's had since 2019. So, Chloe, I'll come to you first. Given that cocktail of squad-stretching injuries and encouraging form swings, how should the coaches juggle rotation to keep growing genuine depth while also bedding in a settled core for the World Cup warm-ups?
Yeah, I think it was a marriage of things. Look, I think, and from what I've heard, Aoife Corey earned that spot. She's been training incredibly well, and I do think that's an area we need to build depth, is fullback, because I don't know who else is going to go in there. Obviously, Maeve Deely is injured at the moment, but that we need someone else. And Aoife's playing incredibly well, but then to change the winger as well, and then it's just a tough one, because obviously that kind of pendulum has to work together really, really well and to settle people. But I think ultimately what killed us was, you can't plan for those injuries. You can't plan for those HIAs. It was a series of unfortunate events. And even at that, we still could have won that game. There's a couple of key moments in that game that we made crucial errors. The intercept is the intercept, right? But we get the ball back. and then we don't kick it off the pitch on 40 minutes. We miss touch. That for me was like the killer. That, like, you just have to understand the swing of momentum. We were down in the 22. We have managed somehow by some miracle to survive that. And then we kick the ball and we keep it in play. And the Scots, in fairness, their ball retention and the phase play they had to stretch us, and eventually MR scores, was super from them. But I think it was our inexperience from Dan, and not to get that ball off the pitch was really, that was a killer to go in after having, like, you know, all the changes, all the injuries, and then to go in down was really poor. And even at that, like, we just kept getting ourselves back in the game. We got back in the game. We got to 19-all. Emily Nain scores, and we just made a couple of other errors defensively. Like, you know, Aoife jams in one. She's moved to the wing. I don't think she should jam in. I think she has to trust that Aoife Dalton and Bolsey are going to cover that. And then Stacey jams in later on, and I don't think she has to jam in either. But if she does, like we always say, if you're going man and ball, you have to make it, or else it's just not good enough. And she didn't. And then Sive McGrath, just a real inexperience, I thought, to give away that penalty at the end when Scotland had a really strong maul. And yeah, it cost us. So even with like all the stuff that happened, I still thought we could have won the game. I thought we showed incredible grit and resilience throughout the game to keep getting ourselves back in it. But just not to be, and a Scottish fairy tale ending. But look, we still finished third. It was still, like, I would say, a successful Six Nations campaign for us. But a costly one. Losing Dara and Erin King now is frightening going into a World Cup year, losing two really strong players in really good form.
Yeah, it certainly is. And trying to balance out that need to make sure that we have enough players, enough depth across the squad, but at the same time try to make sure that the players, the core that we have, is connected enough. It's going to be a real balancing act. I mean, Katie, what do you think is the priority? Is it bedding in new players, or is it making sure that we have the cohesion with the core of the team?
Yeah, it's a tough one. But you've no choice now at this stage, because you're looking at Erin King, you're looking at Darrow. Bolsey isn't in wonderful shape either. So they're all, key people there, and Bolsey probably hasn't got an awful lot of time, but she was getting an opportunity there to put her mark on the game, and it's just a pity to see her struggling with injury now as well after. But look at they'll have no choice. They're going to have to start building the squad, and the more time they have together in camp, the better it is. I think they're going back maybe the start of June there, so they'll have a bit of time off, regroup, get the numbers back in, and then just train like hell for the World Cup. I know they have games then in August 2nd and 9th against Scotland and Canada, so that should be a good test for people as well to get a run out before the World Cup actually starts. But I think even the off-pitch stuff, that time in camp is going to be so important. And I know there's a limit as well. I mean, people need to get out of camp to refresh the minds and bodies. But yeah, I think it's going to be important to get a lot of time together.
So looking at the back row in terms of, when we're speaking about depth going into the competition, we thought, that's where we had all of the depth. And now we've had a litany of injuries across the back row. Who are we going to be looking to now, Chloe, going into the World Cup warm-ups in August?
Yeah, look, I hope Sam comes back in, and it's not that she'll replace Dara, but she'll make that a little bit, we'll feel that little bit less, she brings a lot of experience. She'll look after the line out, so hopefully she'll be back. I haven't heard the progress update on that, but we need her. We need to all pray she's back for that. And then in the back row, I thought Jane Closley did incredibly well when she came on. I thought she carried really well. I know I'm obviously biased, but I thought she got over the gain line. I thought she worked really hard. And I thought she didn't look out of place, to be honest. So I think she'll come in. We obviously have Grace Moore, who had been involved for a couple of games and then seemed to fall out of selection for whatever reason. So she'll still be knocking about. And then we've Derv as well, who just has fallen out of selection completely, for whatever reason. My gut feeling is Derv's a heads up rugby player and maybe not as structured as he'd like, from what I can gather, and from watching the game. So, you know, like, it's tough for her because we know Derv can make something out of anything, but she might have to start adhering if she wants to put her name, you know, in that World Cup squad. But also with the players we've lost now, like, I think we could do with someone like her. You know, Erin King was really prominent at the breakdown. We didn't see that the weekend without her. So I would like to see her in a squad, and like, I think he needs to give her a chance in one of those World Cup warm-up games, and ultimately it'll be up to her. Do you conform to the structure we're playing and the game plan, or do you not? But I think if she can do that and still have that little bit, that Erin King role where you have a license to go after the ruck, I think she could do that job. So, you know, hopefully she can, because she was fine before she got that injury and just unfortunately hasn't got back into where she was at that time.
Really interestingly, you mentioned there about, you know, when we went down during the game in Edinburgh, how Neve Jones would have been an opportunity at back row. I, for a long time, have said I would prefer to see her as a 6. I think she's very dangerous. Her tackling is incredible. Would that be an option? And would Derv be an option at both back row or as a second string hooker as well?
Yeah, Katie mentioned that, and it's funny, I thought the exact same during the game when it was happening. A couple of the girls were over and they were saying, what are we going to do if someone else gets hurt? And I said, well, we can just put Clean at the hooker and move Neve Jones to the back row. And, you know, it's funny, we've all seen it. And look, I suppose having players like Derv then, who is versatile, and if something goes wrong, can cover hooker, is great. But I was thinking that change as well if something else goes wrong. And I agree with Katie. I think I'd have brought Clean on earlier. We really needed a bit of experience on the pitch. And it's not that Neve Jones isn't doing that. It's just Clean has so much of that. And I thought we could have used her a bit earlier. So look, like, for the World Cup, you can't play the same team all the time. They're going to have to mix and match. You know, there's going to be a squad of 33. So those 2 warm-up games are essentially going to be trials. And he has to give people a chance in those trial games for the World Cup.
Katie, do you think perhaps, you know, it might have been Scott Beeman's intention, not the injuries obviously, but, you know, to put on an inexperienced side and see how they reacted in a high-pressure situation? And do you think in some respects he would have been happy that we had those kind of difficulties were a little bit rudderless throughout the game, and that he will have wanted, I suppose, to force players to learn to adapt and learn to lead on the pitch?
Yeah, there's nothing like the experience, you know, that a game like that will give you. And I see an interview with Sarah Bonner today, and she spoke about how, you know, they knew Ireland were going to bring in an awful lot of physicality. I don't think we would have had that name as a team before, but that was her statement today, and they knew they had to come out and bring even more physicality than Ireland were going to, and they looked dogged and they looked physical in that. And I suppose the newer players got a real baptism of fire there, because they probably wouldn't have gone out into that intensity of a game before and that physicality. So I don't know if Scott's doing that on purpose, if that was his intention, but yeah, look, it'll absolutely stand to them. I mean, you know, it's a great situation to be in, where you're being thrown in at the deep end there. They still finished third, you know, had they an awful lot to lose. You still want to, you know, you want to hold your place, as Chloe mentioned earlier on about rankings and all of that. So maybe there was an element of, yeah, let's throw them out there and see how they get on. And look, I thought they both did very well, the 2 new girls. I think, Yeah, I think it's hard to know what's going on when you're not close enough to it to know his mindset and how he operates. And yeah, so it is hard to know. But look, I think it's a great thing. Went down to the wire. It'll build character and maybe give girls there who just weren't kind of in that leadership role yet. Maybe that has kind of pushed them into that space. I think the likes of Brittany and that would have had to step up a bit, and Fiona Chewett and people like that. So yeah, I'm not sure what his intention was, but it's great for everyone to finish up on a game like that and not have a game where you're winning, by 30, 40 points like the week before or whatever. But yeah, I think it'll stand to them all.
It did appear that Brittany Hogan took over as pack leader in the absence of Adele McMahon. Through, I suppose, the last quarter of the game, it was quite evident that Scotland were coughing up a lot of scrum penalties, and it looked very much like it was Cliona Maloney making those decisions. No, scrum again, scrum again, scrum again. And I think they were very much the right decisions. We talked just a minute ago about Maloney being one of those leaders. Is she a potential starter, do we think?
I don't know. I think everyone's a big Neve Jones fan. I think she'll start one of those trial games, right? And I think she has the right to start one of those games. I personally actually would have liked to have seen her start the Wales game. I think, you have to test that and you have to give players a chance. Maybe when they had lost Noddy, they decided not to, sometimes you have a plan and then something else happens and it forces you to rejig that. Neve Jones's tackling and the work she does is exceptional. So I do think I think that's a very close competition that's going on. Now obviously I'm not in camp, so I don't know who's training better. But I think Cliona deserves a goal to start. I would start her in one of those definitely warm up games and see how she goes and see how she copes in that position. But yeah, and she was right to keep scrummaging. The difference was the referee didn't reward us, and they should have. And again, for probably every episode we've said, this is why I like the captain to be in the pack. You have to be in the ref's ear on that. I know she gave Helen Nelson a yellow card just after that phase, but there had to be a card there for one of the Scottish props. It was ridiculous.
Looking at I suppose, again, we're talking about us being a little bit rudderless. For the 80 minutes of the game, it seemed like Scotland defensively were in our faces constantly. And I think we failed to adjust to that. Katie, how should a team adjust to that when they're in your faces and they're forcing handling errors, they're intercepting the ball? What is the go-to solution for that?
I mean, look at your depth and attack, give yourself that bit more space, an extra step. They were, like we just said there, they were dogged. They were really up in Ireland's face and they came out to do that. And they obviously had watched their footage and that was what they were going to target, is that line speed element, force the mistakes, and it worked for them. But I think depth and attack would have probably fixed a bit of that. Again, we were probably a little bit disjointed, maybe all over the pitch with changes and people in and people out. And it's a hard position to be in then to try and fix everything because there's so much going on. But definitely maybe give themselves a little bit of extra space there to buy themselves time to get their hands on the ball and build that platform again. But if you're looking at, knock-ons and turnovers and things like that, it's soul destroying after a while and it's very hard to pick yourself back up. So I think just to try and settle themselves again, give themselves a bit of space and build a platform. I think it could have made a bit of a difference, yeah. Speaking
of fixing things, Pian, you've had a look at, I suppose, comparisons between the Irish side of last year and the Irish side of this year.
Yeah, and some interesting things fall out. Scoreboard difference, for one. The points difference has flipped from minus 71 in 2024 to plus 5 this year. It's a 76-point turnaround. So that's driven by 8 extra tries scored, 21 versus 13 last year, and 8 fewer conceded, 18 versus 26 last year. So a 16 try swing is pretty huge and very notable. breakdown is just a touch faster this year than it was last year, 2.74 seconds versus 2.87. And we lead the pack at 97% ruck retention. Carries were up slightly from 640 to 675. We're still top 2 for total passes, but meters gained has actually gone down from 3,800 to 2,400, which is a significant drop. I might touch on that again a little bit later on. In attack, line breaks have gone up from 22 to 32, offloads from 30 to 37, so definitely kind of shows a bolder attacking shape. The line out has gone from 61% last year to almost 87% this year, which is absolutely massive.
That's huge.
And the scrum has held steady around 92%. Defense went up slightly, 84.5% tackle completion up to 85.8 this year, but the dominant tackle count has halved from 95 to 47, which I wasn't expecting to see. And then the last thing that came up was the goal kicking unfortunately slid from 86.7 last year to 66.7 this year, costing approximately 4 points per game. So, Katie, given that balance of gains and drop-offs, what would you single out as, firstly, the biggest strength that Ireland can bank on going into the World Cup, and the key work on to come out of that for us ahead of those games?
I think the clarity is an awful lot better. I think they know their roles, and that, that bit of hardness about them has improved an awful lot. You can just see a bit more cohesion there. We're probably very disjointed for a couple of years, probably is an understatement, but that seems to have improved an awful lot. I think you just mentioned kicking there. I think we need to start getting that right. I think that missed kick before half time at the weekend, like, they're just costly. It's costly mistakes. It's not, kicking from the tee, obviously, but it's just all around kicking in general, I think needs to be a good focus. You can't really afford to be dropping, 4 or 5 points each game with something that is fairly fixable. So yeah, the stats on that have obviously dropped as well. So I think that'll be a key area for the next couple of months. You have options there, obviously, Dana and Enya and that too. So, I think that'll be certainly one area, but, and just defensively, the improvement there has been really positive. I think, double tackles, not so much, obviously, looking at the stats, but yeah, they just seem a little bit more kind of sure of themselves in defence and probably have more of an effective system going on that works for them a bit better. Yeah.
Chloe, what's your take on the same? What's your single biggest strength you think Ireland can bank on and the key work on ahead of the warm-up matches?
Yeah, like, you want to say the line-out, but they've lost, like, as a tournament, the line-out was exceptional, not exceptional, like, it's 82% exceptional for me to be above 90. Like, I think England lost one line out the whole Six Nations was the stat they had, like, so that's obviously exceptional. But it's definitely much improved. But it's worrying now that we don't have Aaron King and we don't have Darrow, so, like, they're going to have to go back to the drawing board with that as well. Hopefully it continues, that the system is so good and in place that continues to be a strength of ours, because that gives us such strong attacking platform. It allows us to kick, and, like, there's such a difference when you can do that. Defensively then really strong also. I would kind of agree with Katie in terms of the kicking in general has to be better. I think we've spoken about that, and, some decision making around kicking needs to be better as well. But if we can get that right, and if we can, like, I'm surprised to hear our kicking percentage is that low. Dana is a good kicker. She is a good kicker. We've seen her kick them from touchline. We've seen her kick them 40, 50 metres out. So I'm really surprised by that. But if she can get that right come World Cup, then that allows us to go when we get, and I do, when I say when we get, because I'm confident we'll get to those quarterfinals, that allows us to be in it with a chance where you need those 3 points. Like, scoring tries will be great, but I think having that as an option will be brilliant. So I've no doubt we'll fix that. And then that will be one of our strengths, because, as Katie said, that's very fixable, I think. she is a good kicker. I think she can do that.
You talk about goal kicking there. I think that's a really interesting point, that, you know, we are particularly good at goal kicking. The women's game in general, though, has improved massively in terms of goal kicking. I remember the kind of early to mid Neve Briggs era, you know, 2012, 2013, and she was one of the few players who could go from the touchline and land a conversion. At that time, we didn't see a whole lot of that. There was an argument from English media a few years ago, and I think one of the English coaches, that we should move it into the 15 to give the women a better chance. And then there was talk about, oh no, we'll make the ball a little bit smaller to give them a better chance at goal kicking. I don't think that's where we're at now. We're looking at Bourgeois, who's absolutely nailing them from the wrong side from touch at the weekend. And she very much is a standout player. Katie, she's, I think, missed maybe 2 or 3 kicks across the whole competition. Is goal kicking a much more prominent weapon in the game now?
I'm a big expert here at goal kicking, so I'll give a really good insight here.
Yeah.
No, I do. I think it has improved massively, especially, kind of from last year into this year. And it's really nice to see, because, you know, that was always, I think, particularly men who wouldn't really watch rugby, the first thing they'd say is, Jesus, how can the women not kick the ball over the bar? It was always, that was the go-to thing, you know. So it's actually really nice to see that it is improving. I think, again, that comes probably with more time, better financial support, better coaching, just all of those things together. That, again, that time in camp and having time to sit and look at your kicking, and to get out on the field and practice it. So I think those 3 things together have really benefited the game. And it's obviously the same across all the teams as well, because it seems to be improving everywhere. And it's not just, you know, the France and the England anymore that have the really impressive kickers. Chloe's right, Anna is a great kicker. It's just consistency now at this stage to, you know, keep hammering them away for the next couple of months and get herself in a position where she's really, really effective at a World Cup if she's the 10 at the time. So yeah, I think it has improved massively, but down to those, you know, the financial time commitment, getting people expertise and specialists in to coach girls.
So to, I suppose, wrap up the Six Nations, there are 4 nominations for Player of the Tournament. We have our very own Aoife Wafer, Abby Dow, Mane Fallow, and Evie Gallagher. Katie, who for you was your Player of the Tournament? Either somebody out of those 4 or somebody else?
It's great to see Aoife Wafer nominated there. I think I would have been borderline saying Darrow. I know she was out for one of the games. It would have been nice to see her in the mix there as well. And I know Wafer is, you know, she's a fan favourite at the moment as well. And Jesus, you know, you're not knocking her, but it would be nice to see a couple of names in the mix. I'd say, obviously, looking at it, Abby Dow had a great tournament. You know, she has lit it up. So yeah, it's hard to see past her, but yeah, I think she has it in the bag.
Chloe, for you?
Mane Fallow for me. I thought she was class. I thought she embodied everything good France did. I thought she led from the front. I thought she was just exceptional. Her and the younger sister as well, Tiana Fallow, I thought they were both exceptional. But yeah, I thought she was a real standout. And just because she played more games than Abby Dow, that's the only reason as well. Like, Abby Dow didn't play them all because of the luxuries the England squad have with their wingers. So it's through no fault of her own. But that would be the reason for me, is I thought she was a standout every game that France played.
So then looking ahead to the World Cup and the Irish squad, Chloe, do you think we're going to have any surprise inclusions?
I don't know now. They might have watched the IL final on Sunday and seen Katie. She might be in.
Rolling around on the ground.
Yeah, that was my favourite, when you fell on top of me and we just had a last line on the pitch.
We laughed.
Yeah. And then picked each other up. I don't now, like, it's a 33 person squad. Bevan, I assume, will be back in. So she'll be back in. Sam will be back in, I hope. We've lost 2. I just because there's no other games, I'm like, where is he going to pick them from? That's my worry. But like, we named a 33-person squad for the Six Nations, I think it was, with a couple of fringe players. Then obviously Aoife Corey was added. I don't see it changing too much. I'd be surprised if it did, bar those 2 kind of swapping in with Bevan and Sam, maybe in for Darrow and Aaron King. I'm not sure if we'll see any major surprises in a 33-person squad.
You're not sticking yourself down then, no?
Oh Christ, no, I'm getting married and I've like got a honeymoon and life and stuff, so I'm busy. I'm too old anyway.
Katie, what do you think are our prospects for the Rugby World Cup? What do you think?
She wouldn't mind if you put the wedding off.
You were mad to get this wedding call off yourself and Pete the other day. I know what's wrong with G.
We're just feel sorry for poor Clodagh.
Never mind, poor me.
So, Rugby World Cup prediction, Katie, where do you think is realistic for Ireland to aim for? I think we probably expect a quarter-final to come top 2 in Pool C, but do you think semi-finals is the reach?
Yeah, like I don't think they can be too complacent either. I mean, Japan and Spain, I think, played each other there at the weekend as well. Japan won that, and I think they're down to play each other again at some stage in July maybe. So they'll have a good measure of each other by then. So I wouldn't be overly, not that I'm not saying we can't beat them, but I wouldn't be complacent going into that. I absolutely think ourselves, New Zealand, can come out on top, but I think we really need to take it game by game. You know, we've just spoken there for the last while about all the changes, and, you know, there will be a bit of rotation with bodies and things like that. And it just depends really how the next couple of months go. But yeah, look, I wouldn't look past a quarter-final yet. I'm not saying it wouldn't happen. It just really depends on how the next couple of months go and who they get in and how injuries progress and all of that.
Chloe, I think our expectation would be that if we were to come second, most likely second in Pool C, we'd face France then at quarter-final. Do you think we could take them this time round?
Depends what France show up, isn't it?
Always.
Yeah, I think Katie's right though. Like when we look at that group, the only team in the last 3 games we played at these teams, it was like New Zealand was the one we beat. Like Spain stopped us qualifying for a World Cup a few years ago. Obviously we got them back in WXV. Unfortunately, the last match we played against Japan, we lost also. So we can't rule them out. I think our expectations are really high from the potential we've seen. But those games aren't going to be easy games either. It's going to be 3 really tough games that we're in. Part of me thinks New Zealand will beat us, part of me doesn't. And then I just kind of see it of us playing France. And, you know, you pray that we beat them and we go to a semi-final, although I'll have to go to the bank to go back to England again the week after. But we could definitely do it. It's just like, and this is the thing, we've seen it in World Cups, it's a war of attrition. And it has to be a squad effort, so that's why that 33-person squad is so important, and getting game time. I know we've spoken about that loads this episode, but ensuring that people are equipped, because as we've seen the last 2 matches, you can lose your best player in a matter of seconds. And then, you know, if we lose one of the props or we lose Linda, I know we've spoken about that before. What do we do? So I think we have to give game time in those 2 warm-up games to everyone to make sure that we are prepared for the worst, because you have to, because that's the team that's going to come through this, is the team that's ready, and that the squad that has 33. You look at England, they lost scrum halves. They lost Tana Botterman last World Cup, and ultimately that was the downfall. So you have to be prepared for that and have players ready to come in and at a level that they are confident in going in.
Well, yeah, just looking at more stats from the Six Nations, just looking at some big changes from 2024 to 2025 on the whole. The biggest was the lineout. The average increase in lineout success across all teams was 16% from last year to this year. Ireland went up 25 points, but England were nearly perfect at 98%. Gives them a great platform to launch multi-layered plays. France went up 20% under their new coach David Ortiz, and helped them score a lot of maul tries. Another notable difference then was carry meters were down. Every side lost between 900 and 1800 meters year on year in carries. The ITSS kick to compete tactics and improved line speed squeezed that space, but line breaks still went up for 4 teams. Italy, Scotland, Ireland and Wales all went up. So you'd wonder, are teams choosing smarter, shorter running lines, or is defensive shape winning the arms race at the moment? Do you think either of those give us any clue as to what we will see in the upcoming World Cup in terms of tactical trends and how the game is evolving?
I think kicking is just a bit more prominent. I think, teams are kicking a lot more. Obviously we've the 50-22, and as we've said, like the evolution of kicking and people going for that and using that as a tactic, especially with a more successful line out, is definitely there. So I'd imagine that's why the meters carried is down. And just teams are tactically getting better and understanding you can't keep running into brick walls because it is tough, and players are bigger, players are stronger, tackles are harder, so you cannot keep running forwards and backs into that. So they kick more tactically. I'd love to see that in the World Cup, but also I love a running game, so I hope it doesn't end up in all the kicking battles, but that's just me. Obviously there's beauty in like a tactical chess game also of a kick table tennis, unless you're the forward who's trucking along in the middle who hates it. But yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting.
Katie, any ideas about what we might be seeing coming forward as tactical changes, tactical trends in the World Cup?
I agree with Chloe there. I'd like to see more of a running game as well. I hope it doesn't go down that road of being really just prescribed and kind of turn into more of a boring game. You want to see the bit of jouet, as they say in France. And you'd be hoping that, that it wouldn't change a huge amount. But certainly I think the defensive side of things has improved across the board. You look at the last, even ourselves, Scotland, Wales defensive effort, I think, has been huge in this Six Nations. So that may have played into it. But I would say, it'll continue into the World Cup. I think that there'll be a big focus there for those teams defensively. Yeah.
Great. So heading into what is probably the best part of the show for me, Cian, Lucky Dip Bag.
It's Chloe's favourite part of the show.
This is just where you try to get our deepest, darkest secrets.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah. You see,
especially after 3 days of drink.
Oh Lord!
I have the list for everyone else, and then I have the Chloe list.
Yeah.
I'd
say you pick a question, and no matter what number I pick, you just pull that one out.
I'm going to edit that back out, so no one will ever know. It's my secret. So take that to the grave.
Being set up.
All right, Katie, we'll let you go first. Pick a number between 1 and 15.
I go for 12.
Number 12. What's your ultimate comfort food after a tough game or a long training session?
That's an easy one.
Pick on the props, why don't you?
Does it have to be food or can it be liquid?
It can be liquid. We will be okay with it as long as it's comfort.
We have an excellent chef on a Thursday after training, and his bangers and mash is always a favourite after a really cold, tough session. Yeah, shout out to Noel for feeding us. He probably fed us too much this year. That must have been what went wrong.
Don't be blaming Noel. Poor Noel.
Poor old Noel.
Christ above.
All right, Chloe. Between 1 and 15, except 12 is gone.
I'll go 15 for the 15th AIL title.
15. If the Irish team had its own signature scent or fragrance, what would it be called and what would it smell like?
Oh, Jesus. I don't think I can answer. I don't think I can answer this question without insulting someone. Oh, Lord.
Oh, the strums.
This is one. This is a thinker. Oh, God above.
I'm just thinking about Katie's stale boot bag.
Ah. Do you know what I'm actually thinking? And this is like when they all... I don't know what her Katie's... That's what Katie's laughing at now that she knows. It's like team bin juice. That's what I'm thinking now, because they all throw that around slagging the whole time when you're up there and you're not being picked and you're in the bibs. So, yeah, maybe that's just me and Katie. I don't know, but... yeah, I know.
PTSD.
That's an awful
Amazing.
question.
I randomized them as well. I did a special spreadsheet to randomize the questions. I was like, oh yeah, no, it has to be, fair and equally mean.
I don't believe
You
that.
picked out a doozy for yourself.
She's a habit of that.
Yeah, I do, yeah. I have a habit of picking questions that if I gave an honest answer to all, like, everyone fall out with me. Yeah, I'd be cancelled.
Right, well, we'll wrap it up there today. That is episode 7, end of series 1 of MudderRucker podcast. Thank you very much to all of our guests. Chloe, every single episode. We've had a number of fabulous guests across the season. Katie, thank you for the last 2 episodes. We had Ilse in for 2 as well. And they had a fabulous AIL episode, which was just a litany of fabulous voices across the AIL. If you enjoyed our chats today, please follow wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate us as well. And don't miss the next episode and hopefully the next series coming into the Rugby World Cup. For now, thanks for tuning in and keep on rocking.